There are few animals on Earth as instantly recognizable as the giant panda. With its striking black and white coat and gentle demeanor, it has captured the hearts of millions across the globe. This creature is more than just a symbol of wildlife. It represents a profound story of survival against the odds. For decades, the panda's future hung precariously in the balance. Its specialized diet, consisting almost entirely of bamboo and its dwindling forest home, pushed it to the very edge of extinction. The panda's plight was officially recognized when it was listed as an endangered species by the IUCN. This classification signaled an urgent crisis, a stark warning without immediate and drastic intervention. The primary threats were clear and severe. Dense bamboo forests of central China were shrinking due to logging and expanding agriculture. This loss left panda populations small, isolated, and increasingly vulnerable. The wild panda's main home is the mountainous regions of China, Sichuan, Shanxi, Gansu. It was here, in these remote and rugged landscapes, that the fight for the panda's future would be waged. Then in 2016 came a moment of celebration for the natural world. The IUCN announced a significant change in the giant panda's status. It was no longer classified as endangered, but was downgraded to vulnerable. This was not a declaration of complete safety, but it was a powerful testament to one of the most successful conservation efforts in modern history. This remarkable comeback was not the result of a single action, but a comprehensive strategy involving 5 key pillars of conservation. First, massive habitat protection. Second, large-scale reforestation programs. Third, strict anti-poaching laws. Fourth, breakthroughs in captive breeding. Finally, continuous monitoring. Together, these elements formed a blueprint for how to save a species in peril, offering valuable lessons for other conservation challenges around the globe. The cornerstone of the giant panda's recovery was the fundamental decision to protect its home. Conservationists understood that without a safe and stable habitat, all other efforts would be in vain. The Chinese government recognized that a radical new approach was needed. The first step was to draw a line in the forest, marking out critical areas that would be strictly protected from human development. This marked a major policy shift, moving from a model of resource extraction to one of ecological preservation. The central policy action was a widespread ban on commercial logging in key panda habitats. The goal was to stop the bleeding, to halt the immediate and ongoing destruction of the panda's world. The effect of these legal protections was immediate and profound. Protecting the panda's habitat required more than just laws. It needed a physical and administrative framework on the ground. This came in the form of an ambitious and expansive network of nature reserves. One of the most famous is Wolong National Nature Reserve in Sichuan. Established in 1963 and later expanded, Wolong became a flagship for conservation and research. Simple numbers tell a story of remarkable success. Over 60% of wild pandas now live inside these reserves, shielded from the severe external pressures that once pushed them toward extinction. The reserve network was a monumental achievement in landscape-scale conservation. It was a clear, tangible commitment to giving nature a permanent home. Once the reserves were established, the focus shifted to managing them effectively. These dedicated individuals became the frontline guardians of the panda's habitat. Their job was to patrol vast, difficult terrain, monitoring for signs of illegal activity. Camera traps were introduced, providing non-invasive images and videos of pandas and other wildlife. Those images help researchers understand population densities, animal behavior, and ecosystem health. The result? A dramatic decrease in human-caused harms, turning reserves into real sanctuaries. Active management turned lines on a map into functioning conservation zones. Their work fulfilled habitat protection, creating safer homes where pandas could eat, roam, and raise young, laying the groundwork for population recovery. The success of massive habitat protection could not be achieved by government decree alone. It required the support and cooperation of the people living in and around the panda's home. Therefore, a key part of the effort was to involve these communities directly, turning them from potential adversaries into essential allies in the fight to save the panda. One powerful example of this human element is the story of a former logger who becomes a reserve ranger. Imagine a man who once felled trees for a living, now patrolling the same forests to protect them. This community-centric approach created a human shield for the panda, complementing the legal and administrative protections. When local people have a vested interest in conservation, the entire system becomes more resilient and effective. Establishing reserves halted immediate destruction, but it couldn't undo decades of damage. The landscape that remained was a fractured mosaic of isolated forest patches, farmland, roads, human settlements. The problem was rooted in the panda's specialized diet and the biology of bamboo. A single panda must consume enormous quantities of bamboo every day, often up to 20 kilograms. Recognizing this critical issue, conservation efforts moved into a new phase: active habitat restoration. The goal was no longer just to protect what was left, it was to actively heal the fragmented forest. The concept of wildlife corridors became a central pillar of the strategy. These are strips of habitat, green pathways, designed to link larger forest areas. One of the most powerful tools used to heal the panda's fragmented home was a landmark national policy known as the Grain to Green program, launched in 1999, one of the largest and most ambitious reforestation initiatives in the world. The program's primary goal was to combat soil erosion and desertification by converting sloped farmland back into forest and grassland. The program worked by providing incentives to farmers. The government offered farmers grain subsidies, cash payments, technical support in exchange for ceasing cultivation on steep hillside plots and planting trees instead. For panda conservation, this was a game changer. Huge swathes of former farms cutting through panda territory were returned to nature. With land being made available through programs like Grain to Green, the next step was to strategically design and build the wildlife corridors. Conservation teams first had to identify the most effective paths to connect the isolated forest islands. The physical work of building a corridor involved several key actions. The most important was planting native vegetation. This wasn't just a matter of scattering seeds. Teams carefully selected tree and bamboo species that were native to the region and preferred by pandas. For larger highways, green bridges, wide, landscaped overpasses covered in soil and native plants were sometimes built. These structures are designed to mimic the natural environment, encouraging animals to use them without fear. Camera traps placed within the newly created corridors soon provided thrilling evidence of success. Images of pandas using the pathways to move between forest patches. This was proof that the concept worked. The creation of wildlife corridors delivered benefits that extended far beyond simply allowing pandas to find more bamboo. By reconnecting isolated populations, these green pathways played a crucial role in enhancing the genetic health of the entire species. The corridors acted as conduits for genetic exchange. As individual pandas began to travel between previously separated areas, they could find mates from different family groups. Furthermore, the benefits of this reweaving of the landscape were not limited to pandas. The restored corridors provided habitat and safe passage for a whole suite of other species that share the panda's mountain ecosystem. Ultimately, the combination of reforestation and corridor building transformed the conservation map for the giant panda, moving beyond a defensive strategy of simply guarding isolated forts and into an offensive one of actively rebuilding a connected kingdom. While habitat loss was the largest long-term threat to the giant panda, a more direct and brutal danger once cast a long shadow over its existence: poaching. In the past, pandas were hunted for their unique and highly prized pelts. This targeted hunting, although not as widespread as the pursuit of other animals like tigers and rhinos, placed immense pressure on an already dwindling panda population. The historical context of this threat is important. In the mid-20th century, before conservation became a national priority, law enforcement in the remote, mountainous regions of the panda's habitat was limited. This grim reality meant that any successful conservation strategy for the panda had to address the issue of poaching head-on. The battle to save the panda required not only ecological action, but also a concerted law enforcement effort. To combat the pervasive threat of poaching, the Chinese government implemented some of the strictest wildlife protection laws in the world. The giant panda was granted the highest level of legal protection, making it a powerful national symbol whose survival was backed by the full force of the state. The laws were clear and unequivocal. Hunting was strictly illegal, killing was strictly illegal, buying was strictly illegal, selling was strictly illegal. This was not merely a suggestion, but a firm legal line drawn in the sand. The most significant change was the dramatic increase in penalties for those convicted of poaching. The new laws introduced incredibly harsh sentences, including long-term imprisonment and death penalty. The impact of these stronger laws and heightened penalties was swift and decisive. The number of panda poaching incidents fell sharply. What was once a persistent threat began to recede into the past. Strong laws are only effective if they can be enforced on the ground, especially in the vast and rugged wilderness of the panda's habitat. To bring the new anti-poaching legislation to life, China invested heavily in building a robust system of monitoring and patrols within its network of nature reserves. These men and women became the frontline defenders, tasked with patrolling thousands of square kilometers of challenging terrain to detect and deter illegal activities. This traditional foot patrol work was increasingly augmented by modern technology. The same camera traps used to monitor panda populations also served as an invaluable anti-poaching tool. The combination of dedicated personnel and advanced technology created a comprehensive surveillance network that made illegal hunting an extremely risky and unprofitable venture. These eyes in the forest ensured that the panda sanctuary was not just a line on a map, but a truly safe haven. While strong laws and enforcement were essential for stopping immediate threats, the long-term success of anti-poaching efforts depended on something deeper: changing human attitudes. The ultimate goal was to create a culture where poaching was not only illegal, but also socially unacceptable. These initiatives aimed to transform the giant panda from a potential source of illicit income into a source of local pride and a symbol of a healthy environment. A crucial part of winning hearts and minds was demonstrating that a living panda was more valuable than a dead one. Others were supported in developing alternative livelihoods, such as beekeeping, mushroom cultivation, participating in small-scale ecotourism projects. By winning the hearts and minds of the people who live alongside the panda, the anti-poaching effort became a true grassroots movement, ensuring that the threat of the hunter's snare would fade into memory. While protecting pandas in the wild was the primary goal, their naturally low reproductive rate posed a formidable challenge to recovery. Giant pandas are notoriously difficult to breed, both in the wild and in captivity. A female panda is fertile for only a very short window each year, typically just 24 to 72 hours. This brief opportunity, combined with their solitary nature, means that finding a compatible mate at the exact right time can be a matter of pure chance in the wild. To safeguard against such a catastrophe, a parallel strategy was developed, creating a robust and healthy captive population. However, the early days of captive breeding were fraught with difficulty and disappointment. Keepers and scientists knew very little about the intricacies of panda reproduction. Many attempts to encourage natural mating failed. It became clear that a much deeper, scientific understanding of their behavior, biology, and reproductive cycles was urgently needed. Armed with a growing body of research, scientists began to develop innovative techniques to overcome the panda's reproductive hurdles. The first breakthrough came from a better understanding of panda behavior. Researchers discovered that pandas use scent marking and vocalizations to communicate reproductive status. By carefully observing these signals and monitoring hormone levels in urine samples, they could predict a female's short fertility window with remarkable accuracy. To overcome this, scientists turned to the powerful tool of artificial insemination. This technique bypassed the challenges of panda matchmaking altogether. These techniques, behavioral observation, hormonal monitoring, and artificial insemination, formed a powerful trifecta that cracked the code of panda breeding. The success rates for producing cubs in captivity began to climb steadily. With the number of captive births increasing, a new challenge emerged, ensuring the survival of the tiny, fragile cubs. A newborn panda is incredibly vulnerable. It is born blind, nearly hairless, and weighs only about 100 grams. To address this, specialized panda nurseries were established at major breeding centers, most famously Chengdu Research Base of giant panda breeding in Sichuan. These nurseries are marvels of conservation science. Caretakers act as surrogate mothers, providing intensive support in the first critical months. They bottle feed the cubs with a specially formulated milk substitute, burp them, help them to excrete, and monitor their health constantly. A clever innovation, the twin swapping technique. To save both twins, keepers swap twins between mother and incubator every few hours. The method let mothers raise both cubs, doubling output from a single birth. The ultimate goal of any captive breeding program is not just to create a safety net population, but to one day return animals to their natural habitat. With a healthy and growing captive population, the next ambitious chapter in the panda's story began: reintroduction into the wild. This process is incredibly complex and challenging. A panda born and raised in captivity knows nothing of the dangers and difficulties of life in a forest. This required the development of a rigorous wild training program. Once a panda is deemed ready, the reintroduction can begin. The panda is transported to a carefully selected site within a protected nature reserve and released into a temporary holding pen. The reintroduction program has had successes and setbacks. Some reintroduced pandas have thrived, successfully integrating into the wild population and even going on to reproduce. This journey from the nursery to the wild represents the culmination of decades of research. The story of the giant panda's recovery is a remarkable testament to the power of dedicated, long-term conservation. It is a narrative woven from many different threads, each one essential to the final outcome. The steady increase in wild panda numbers from around 1,100 in the 1980s to over 1,800 by the 2010s led to the celebrated 2016 IUCN decision to reclassify the species from endangered to vulnerable. However, this reclassification was not an endpoint. The designation of vulnerable is a reminder that the panda is not entirely safe. The threats that remain are complex and persistent. The most significant long-term threat now looming is climate change. Rising temperatures are predicted to severely impact bamboo ecosystems. This cannot be solved by reserves and anti-poaching patrols alone. It requires global action and forward-thinking conservation planning. The journey of the giant panda offers clear and powerful lessons for conservation worldwide. It proves reversing a species' decline is possible, but it takes unwavering, multifaceted, long-term commitment. Not a single silver bullet, but a comprehensive strategy, government policy, scientific innovation, rigorous law enforcement, community engagement. In the end, the panda is an enduring symbol, once an icon of endangerment, now a powerful symbol of hope. When we choose to act, determination, ingenuity, cooperation, we can mend damage to nature. The panda's comeback is a quiet victory, a win that needs constant watching, but a victory nonetheless. It reminds us biodiversity's future isn't written. With care and planning, we can secure their place.